Hello everyone, and thank you for stopping by. Today I thought we would play around in Lightburn a little bit and make a couple different projects, one of which we are actually going to engrave. The other project is more to show you what Lightburn can do. And before we proceed, this video is designed for the beginner who's just getting started in Lightburn and not sure what they can do with it. I'm not going to show you all the features of Lightburn because that would take forever and that's not the scope of this video. The intent is just to show you something that you can get started with, play with, and be able to engrave something, because there is quite a learning curve to Lightburn. I mean, there's a lot it can do. So we're going to go over some of the basic features that you would use, and also we'll go over some of the settings that you need to make sure are correct, or you're going to have issues from the get-go. Alright, so just let's get started. The first thing you want to do when you have your engraver connected, like I said, I'm using the AtomStack Kraft engraver, and I've seen a few people have issues trying to get it connected. What you want to do when you have the engraver connected to the computer is you go to devices, and mine is already connected, so you'll see it here, but you'll want to go to import and scroll down in your list till you find your USB drive, and let's see if I can find it again. Dun, 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 dun. Alright, so we have the USB drive, and then what you're going to want to do is click on Kraft Device File Version 1.1.1.lbdev, and I'm not going to click on it, but what that will do is that will install a driver file into Lightburn, which basically tells Lightburn what machine you have, the size of the bed, and things like that. That really isn't, I mean, it's not hard to do. The next thing you're going to want to do is go up here to the little wrench and screwdriver, click on that, and that's going to bring up your device settings. And again, I have the AtomStack Kraft, so if you're using a different engraver, your bed size, your working size may be different. But one thing you want to check, actually a couple things you want to check, is make sure that your origin here is set to the lower left, because if it's not, if it's set to, let's say, upper right, when you go to engrave something, it will come out upside down and backwards, and then you'll be wondering, what's going on. For the most part, I should say, it will set itself up correctly in Lightburn, so that shouldn't be an issue. But if you ever have a problem with the printing upside down and backwards, that's where you want to look. The other thing you want to do is enable the laser fire button, and also put the laser on when framing. So you want those two turned on. And depending on the power of your laser, the percentage that you set it to will be different. I have mine set to 1.5, and that works for me. But if, like I said, if you have a lower power laser, you may need to turn it up. Also, as it warns you here, it usually pops up a little thing. Yeah, here you go. Checking this box enables a test firing button that is useful for focusing diode lasers, but is incredibly dangerous for CO2 lasers. If you enable this, be extremely careful and use the lowest power setting you can. So the thing with CO2 lasers, if you're watching this video, do not enable that, because what happens is you can accidentally click it, or when you try to frame, and when it goes in frames, you may not be ready for that laser to fire, and you won't see it, and you'll end up hurting your eyes. So be extremely careful with that. Okay, the other one is the S value max. You want to make sure on your diode laser that it is set to 1000. Having it set to something lower, what will happen is when you go to engrave, you're not going to get, it's going to seem like it's not working correctly, because you're going to turn the power up to 85%, and you're only getting something that looks like you used 40%, depending on what this number is set to. But so you want to make sure that's set to 1000. So those are just the basic get started settings that you need to make sure are correct. So we're going to start off with a creative idea project that you can get started with in Lightburn. Again, this is for the beginner, so some of you may know how to do this already. But like I said, for a beginner who's not familiar with Lightburn, this would be something pretty cool. So let's create a scenario. You go to your favorite craft store and you find an 8-inch round cutting board, for example, or just an 8-inch round flat piece of wood, and you think, hey, this is great, I can do something with this. So you create your 8-inch circle, and 8 inches is 203 millimeters. Oops, didn't type that right. Let's try again. And we're going to show you something here real quick. So now you can see that it's kind of out of round. Not by much, but it is a little bit. That's because of this lock up here. And if I'll give you another example. If I change this to, let's say, 100, you'll see that now it says 105. Okay, because the aspect ratio lock right here, what that will do is that will keep, when you adjust the size of the circle, or actually works, it's more evident in an image or an SVG or something like that, and I can show you that here in a little bit. But for now, what we're going to do is we're going to unlock it, and we're going to change that to 203. And see, because I didn't have it locked, it made it kind of wonky. So, and we'll change this to 203. Now we have a nice circle. Alright. So you've got your 8-inch round thing. Piece of 8-inch round circle for your cutting board or whatever you're going to use. We'll use this as a template. So, or even, we can even do this. Let's just say you want to make a clock. Okay? Or whatever. Okay. So, if we create a shape, now this you can use if you're going to make a clock, if you're going to decorate your cutting board, this will work for either thing. So let's just say we're going to create a square, and we will want that on a different layer. So we're going to put that on a blue layer, and we are going to fill it in. And so we're going to make this approximately 1/4 of an inch wide, which is about 6 millimeters, just say. Okay, and we're going to make it 12 millimeters. Unlock that so it doesn't change anything. Okay, so we've got 6 millimeters wide and 12 millimeters high. So I'm going to bring this over here to my circle. And if I hold the shift key while that's selected, and then click the circle, now both are selected. Now, in some programs, it doesn't make a difference, but in some programs it does. In which order you click the pieces that you want to work with. So let's just say, let's grab this and put this back over here. And let's say I want to center this piece horizontally with my circle. So if I were to click my circle first, and then holding shift and click on the little square, now watch what happens when I go to center it. I say vertically center. You see what happened? The circle moved to the piece, not the piece moving to the circle. And depending on what you're doing, that may not be what you want. If you had other stuff in the circle, like, who knows what, now your circle just moved. So it kind of messed everything up. So if I do Control Z, that will put the circle back where it was. Alright, so what we're going to do is just think of it this way. I want to put this into this. So always start with the object that you want to move move into something else. I want to center this object to my circle. So always start with the object first that you want to work with, and then click on what you want to move it to or center it to. Okay, so now if I move my piece back where I want, okay, I'm gonna intentionally offset it. And then if I click that and I say vertically center, now you can see it aligned it center without moving the outer circle. Alright, and doing it that way will apply to several different things when you're working with objects and stuff in Lightburn. So now I have my circle with my one little piece, one little square. So what I can do here is I can click on the little square rectangle piece, do shift and click on that on the circle. But what we're going to do is we're going to use this tool right here, which is a circular array tool, and this is really neat. You can do quite a bit of stuff with it. So if I click on that, now you'll see that it's created 4 evenly spaced little squares. So if you wanted to, you could make a clock. For example, as I mentioned, you could put a hole, put a circle right in the center and use that as a guide for drilling your hole. And what you can do is you can actually change the count. Okay, so now you see how many I have, but we can even enhance this even further. Okay, so let's rewind a little bit because I messed up. Alright, so we actually want, instead of 8 little squares, we actually want 12, because there's of course 12 hours in a day, so, or 12 hours on the clock, excuse me. So alright, so we have our 12 segments. Okay, so I mean, we could leave it at that and have a pretty nice clock, but we can do something else that would enhance it even further. Now, as I mentioned, you can use an SVG, a small SVG of a leaf or whatever, and this tool, the array tool, will still work. Okay, so it doesn't have to be something that you created, a square, a circle, whatever. Alright, so in our example, we're going to take this, unselect this, and select this again. We're going to use Control D to duplicate it, and we're going to move it over here. So it's 6 millimeters wide, 12 millimeters high. So what we're going to do is we're going to change the height. Okay, we're going to leave it 6 millimeters width, but we're going to make it 6 millimeters high. Alright, and we're going to give it a different layer. So we'll make it layer 2, which is a red layer, which will work fine. So for this, we're going to kind of zoom in a little bit. And we're going to put this right on top of that, just like that. Now, again, using the array tool, so we're going to leave that highlighted, click on our circle, alright, and go back to our array tool. Now, instead of having 12 copies, we're going to increase that and as you see, if I increase that, we're going to have a bit of a problem because it's going to be overlapping each other. Okay, so let's just cancel that. And we're going to make this, click on that, instead of 6 millimeters wide, we are going to make it 2 millimeters wide. And if we come over here and we're going to click on that, and we're going to vertically center it. Okay. Now if we click on that, click on our circle again, and come down to our array tool. Now we should be able to get it up to 60. Okay, we'll say it's 60 there. Now we have a neat clock. And what you can do is you can go back in here and take off the red bits if you wanted to, but if they're cut or engraved at the same power, you won't notice them. So now if you look, you've got a pretty cool looking clock. Okay, so that's just an idea of something that you can do with Lightburn. Like I said, if you had a cutting board or just something that you want to try. And don't be afraid to play around in Lightburn, because you can preview it and you're not wasting material because you haven't engraved anything. So, I'm a hands-on type of learner. So, I go with all the different settings and see what they do. And I would suggest trying that. And if you do something and it just totally messes up your design that you're playing with or whatever, remember you have Control Z, or up here in the corner, in the upper left side, you have undo. So you can undo the last step, or I think it goes back 4 or 5 steps that you can undo. So that's kind of a handy thing to have. Alright, so that's that for something you can create in Lightburn. So the next project we're going to do is something that we're actually going to engrave. And since Easter is coming up, I thought we would come up with an Easter themed project. So we'll get to that, and we'll show you how to do it. Something I found that works really good for me is to create like a template or a work area for my project. So for example, my piece of live edge wood that I have is approximately 4 inches across. And 4 inches is like 101 millimeters or something like that. So if we do make a circle, and we're going to say it's 101 millimeters, and we may have to adjust it later when we go to trace out the image or do a frame on the engraver. We'll see what happens. Alright, so I've got my 4-inch circle, and I've got a little bunny that I'm going to use for my project. Now, something that the AtomStack software doesn't do is it doesn't group, but they're going to I talked to AtomStack and they said that they were working on it. What I mean by that is if I were to just come in here and select, get my pointer back, if I were to come in here and just click on something, instead of grabbing the whole image, it's just grabbing a little piece. So if I went to move that, if I meant to move the whole bunny per se, and I just clicked somewhere and moved, I only got just a little piece of it. I don't have the whole thing. So if I do Control Z and put it back where it came from, and I'm going to have to move this circle out of the way because I don't want it to get grouped. If I highlight this whole piece, the whole image, and go Arrange and Group, now when I click on it, if I click on a piece of it, I get the whole thing. So that's what we want. We don't want to just grab just a section of it. And I'm going to size it down, move my circle back over here. I'm going to size it to something I can work with. Alright, I'm going to zoom back in here. Now, the way this is now, it's only a line image. So if I were to preview it, that's okay, but it's not what we want. So what I want to do is come over here and click on Fill, and now it looks more like a bunny. Alright, so we're going to center this vertically, and I did that a bit earlier. So we're going to highlight the circle, highlight the bunny, and then align vertically center. Okay, so now we are centered. So something we want now, we want to add text to it. So what we're going to do is come over here, and because it's a bunny, we're going to say Hoppy, and find a font that looks kind of cute. I've got a ton of fonts, so your font list may look different than mine. Let's go with brush script, for example. Alright, so if I resize this a little bit, and we're going to put this on a different layer. So, I mean, that looks okay, but it would be better if it was kind of curved, and that is something that we can do. If I zoom in here, this little dot right here If I grab it, and now see what I can do. I can actually bend the text. I can bend it up and I can bend it down. So let's see how that looks. Alright, and we're going to center that again. Align vertically, center. Okay. I'm not too happy with that font, so let's try something else. Something that may look a little different. I like that one. So let's go with that. Now we can do the same for the bottom part. Okay, put our text in. And again, we're going to move it. And then using that little tool again, we're going to bend it. Give it a little more of a bend. Okay. So there we go. And make sure it's centered. Now we can even come in here and make our bunny a little bigger so there's not so much white space. And again, make sure we center it. Alright. So there we go. And next thing to do is go ahead and engrave it. Now, I know that for my engraver, 7000 at 80% will work pretty well. Just depends on your engraver and what kind of wood or material that you are using. And I've done this a few times, so I know that it will work good for me. The next step is go ahead and get it engraved. The really neat part about the Kraft is that it has a camera in it, and Lightburn also takes advantage of the camera, as does AtomStack Studio. So if I go to camera control, you will see the bed of my laser with the piece of wood. And if I go back here to move and move the laser out of the way and click on the camera over here, I can actually see the bed. But you see my laser is still in the way. So let me go ahead and move it a bit more. Alright, and let's see if it's out of the way. Nope. A little bit more. And try again. Alright, it's out of the way now. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab this whole piece and we're going to center it on our wood. Make it just a hair smaller. Now, having the camera gives you a rough estimate of where your piece is going to be. Um, you may have to adjust the size of your image, and you may have to adjust placement of the image, because depending on how thick your piece of wood is, that can throw off the alignment of the camera. Also, where your piece of wood is in the engraver, that can also throw off the alignment. So I'm going to check and frame it and go ahead and get the engraving started. And something I will mention before I start the engraving is that if you turn on the engraver and you move the head manually, in other words, you turn it on and you want to, let's say, adjust the laser height for your piece that you're engraving, and you move the laser head, you adjust the height, and then you go to frame your piece or something like that. It's not going to frame correctly, especially if you have absolute coordinates. That's something I forgot to cover. So while I'm touching on that, if you have homing switches or limit switches, you'll want to use absolute coordinates. And when you home your machine, that will be 0, 0. When it goes to the lower left corner, that's 0, 0. And then wherever on the workspace your project is, the laser will go to that, because it knows where in space your project is. But if you move the engraver, the head of the engraver, while the machine is on, it no longer knows where it is. So when you try to frame or move the head using the move function or whatever in the software, it's not going to act appropriately because the head doesn't know where it is. It thinks it's in the place where it was, not in the new place where you moved it to. It doesn't keep track of that. Kind of like you take somebody, you blindfold them, and move them someplace else. They're not going to be aware of their surroundings because they're blindfolded, for one, and they're not going to know what to do because they're no longer where they were. So they don't know what their surroundings are, if that makes sense. Alright, so I've got it framed, and we are going to go ahead and get it going on the engraving part, I should say. And one thing I forgot to mention, or forgot to check, is you'll notice in the video of the engraving that it went over the Happy Easter. It went over that twice. And the reason for that is I forgot to check the right here where it says number of passes, and that's why it ran over the letters twice. Also, you'll notice when the video first starts that it actually went ahead and framed or went around the piece of live edge, and that was because of the circle here, the layer 2 actually still being set to output. So remember in the beginning where I said just turn the power to 0, that way in case you forget to come back and turn the output off, you're not ruining your piece of wood with a circle. Alright, so there you have it. I will include a picture at the end of the video of the finished product, and I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave a comment for me, and I will go ahead and do my best to answer. You all have a great day, and thanks for watching.